Biography of Mr. James Horton on YouTube. My name is James Lamont Horton. I was born on October 21st, 1967 at Mount Zion Hospital in San Francisco, California. My mother is Alma Horton and my father's name is James Arthur Horton. I have an older brother and a younger sister. My brother's name is Joseph Horton and my sister is Frederica Horton. My infant years were very hard years for my family and I because they were filled with different forms of abuse, mental as well as physical. My family home, unlike most family homes, was very much a dysfunctional place to have grown up in. At a very young age, I had problems learning how to do things like being able to recite the alphabet or being able to sing the alphabet to people like my teacher, mother, or anyone else for that matter, especially the one person whom I feared the most. Which was my father. I now know that the fear of being beaten by my father contributed greatly to my inability to learn. My father had problems with his own self-being, and he projected it in an aggressive manner daily. My sister did not go through the physical abuse like my brother and I, but she did receive the mental abuse from having to watch and listen. This was a time when my sister was very young and she was like a sponge, soaking up everything around her. She constantly noticed everything that was going on, everything around her. Let's see. My mother's share of the abuse. My mother has proven to me how much of a woman she is, because when the time came, she made a conscious decision to get herself and her 3 children out of the situation. My father was not only an abuser to his family, he was an abuser to himself. He was a heroin addict. Around the age of 6 or 7 years old, I can recall going into the bathroom, seeing my father lying unconscious with a syringe in his arm. As time went on, I began to hear rumors in the neighborhood that my father had a drug problem. But I didn't care what kind of problem he may have had. I only wanted my family to be safe and have a life, any kind of life, except this one. In the year of 1979, my mother met a man whose name was Marvin, who ran his own roofing company, who was willing to help us in any way he could. During that year, that same year, he moved us to Oakland, and I must say it felt good to finally feel free. Marvin was truly a helper that my family and I will never forget. He was a real man, one of few that I have encountered. But before I continue with my story, I would like to say I'm very grateful for the #1 helper and protector who has always loved me, who is my God. At the age of 15, I began to let my guards down and allow myself to be influenced by my peers. I believe I was looking for acceptance from the people in my surrounding area. I remember the first time a friend in the group I was hanging out with asked me to smoke some weed with him, and I did, just for the sake of fitting in. I could not at that time allow anything to interfere with the stature that I had now built myself up to be. Joining the gang, going to other neighborhoods to fight other youth was another pastime that I also regret. The majority of the time we joined these types of behaviors for no reason at all except to be one of the guys. We felt we had to prove our strength by, prove how strong we were by fighting in numbers. At the age of 16, I sold drugs. I knew my mother would be very, very upset with me, so I hid this part of my life from her. I remember when I bought my first car and how I would hide the car around the corner from my house so my mother and family wouldn't see it. I would also hide the clothes I bought, and before going to school, I would change clothes in the car. The influence I allowed the group to have on me escalated into my first use of the drug called cocaine, the same drug I had been selling. Cocaine gave me a more intense high than the weed I had been smoking. It had a different effect on my behavior. I could feel myself changing. I began to feel that my life was in danger and that I needed a change, and not just from using and selling drugs, but also from those influences that I called my friends. I remember telling my mother that I was messing up and needed to get out of Oakland. She never asked me what was going on. She was just like ready to help me in any way she could. So she called her father, my maternal grandfather, and arranged for me to move to Henderson, Texas. The trip to Texas was truly an ultimate experience for me. The dynamics that were going on in the city of Oakland were totally different to the life I would now live in Texas. My grandfather lived on a farm which was located in a wooded area. Instead of bathrooms, there was an outhouse. There were also hogs, chickens, and possums, which were our daily meals. I can recall going into the kitchen to make myself something to eat and thought I was eating a piece of chicken, and later became physically ill when I found out I was eating squirrel meat. But aside from the few things that I viewed as abnormal, the experience with my grandfather are irreplaceable. I learned a lot from my grandfather, and those memories are forever embedded within my memory. And for that, I am truly grateful. After 6 months in Texas with my grandfather and the chickens and the hogs, I was ready to go back home to my loving family. When I returned home, things were not going well for my family. They were having a lot of financial problems, which caused my mother to be forced to filing for bankruptcy and barely having any money to buy food. I remember talking to my mother and telling her not to worry and that I was going to get us out of the problem that we were in, but that I'm going to have to earn some money in a legal way. I returned to the fastest way I knew how to make money, selling drugs. So I was able to get us back on track and even able to become pretty tactful. I'm referring to it as tactful because success would be an insult to the word. Success has nothing to do with being tactful. Tactful comes into play when you do not get caught. At the age of 24, I made a decision to try a new drug. Heroin will now become my drug of choice. Upon my introduction to this new drug, it was a fad that started through the nose. I was told that the drug was an aphrodisiac. And aphrodisiac, a sex enhancer that would make me more of a man and that I would gain high points with the ladies. I soon became addicted to this drug and began to use it as I woke up and before I would go to sleep at night. I could not get through a single day without it. It was just that powerful. I would also sometimes snort cocaine with the heroin. This was called speedballing. I forgot to mention that I was diagnosed with being an insulin-dependent diabetic in the year of 1985 at the age of 17 years old. I started to get very sick as I continued to use the drug. The drug became more important than taking care of my diabetes. I would go days without taking my medicine due to the fact that I was only concerned with getting high. At this time in my life, I began to change mentally as well as physically. I did not see it, but everyone around me did. My mood would change. I became prone to going in and out of jail. Violations of probation and possession of drugs were my causes of incarceration. I was in and out of courtrooms on several occasions. I relatively became a known visitor. In the year of 1999, I was arrested for possessing a $10 bag of heroin. This arrest ultimately changed the course of my life. I was ordered to be sentenced by a judge by the name of Jenkins, Jenkins. That's my life. I was ordered to be sentenced by Judge Jenkins, a judge that I didn't know would leave his imprint on my life. Excuse me. He eventually introduced me to a program within the walls of the Santa Rita jail, the Deuce program. I completed the program and was released from jail and continued my recovery. As a condition of my recovery, I was ordered to show up for court every 60 days for a progress report. Judge Jenkins expressed publicly to the entire courtroom his satisfaction with my progress. Eventually, my good standing would come to an end. I began to slip and use again. Earlier in my story, I expressed that I was a diabetic and how it affected my health when I used drugs. During my addiction, I became a patient at Highland Hospital on several occasions. In fact, several does not compare. Try numerous occasions. On one of these occasions, I saw a black man of medium height walking towards my room. It was the Honorable Judge Jenkins coming to see me. I must say it was someone who cared and believed in me. In the year of 1999, I was arrested for a first-degree burglary and was facing 4 to 6 years in prison. I was incarcerated for 11 months. I can recall writing to my mother and apologizing for all the hurt I had brought upon her. My family, and myself. At this time, I was ready to get my life back. I eventually got into a program, and it laid the path of me having 2 years when I wrote this. This was actually in, I believe, the year 2000, 2002. I'm now attending Merritt College, Merritt Junior College, and pursuing my associate's degree in substance abuse counseling and hopefully a bachelor's degree before pursuing a master's degree in psychology. Well, we are now in the year 2026. In the year 2003, I graduated with 2 degrees, one in community social services and the other in community social services / substance abuse. Today, I am a SUD Counselor 3, and I am a licensed clinical supervisor. I have made some great moves, you guys, to tighten my program up. You know, sometimes we make a left turn, man, for a second-class seat, and we got to get back into the right class seat to straighten our program up, man, and get our lives together. I'm continuing to push. I had enrolled in this program, and they had this thing, and they asked us to see if you had died before, if we had died before we got off drugs out there in the street, taking too big of a hit, using the wrong drug, using too much of a drug. What would people say about you if you died from the use of drugs? What would they say at your funeral? What would they say good about you? So when they said that, I remember crying. I cried at this meeting in front of all these strangers. And I have this ego where I don't do that kind of stuff. I'm one of those tough guys, right? But I cried and I broke down. And I was saying, it's a shame, man, for me to have thought about dying. Who would have came to my funeral? Nobody, right? So I had to say to myself, it's time to change, right? At one of my jobs, I worked with close to 22 years, about 22 years, I worked with over 7,500 people, right? Something very close to that, over 7,000 people. And I've worked at many other jobs with large numbers of clients. Excuse me. And so what I'm getting to is, if I were to pass now, after all the work I've done, it wouldn't be an empty house. Question is for you guys, if you were to die right now without getting things in order, without getting you some life insurance, without putting a burden on your family, if you were to die right now, what would people say about you at your funeral? Okay, we're going to talk more about my life, and we're going to talk more about life, period. Subscribe to my channel, The Counselor Mr. James Horton on YouTube. Thank you for attending my class.